Politics in Nigeria is heating up again. The 2027 elections may still look far, but moves are already happening behind closed doors. Right now, there are reports that former Vice President Atiku Abubakar are lobbying Peter Obi not to contest. But why? And does this mean Atiku is really the more competent option? Let's break it down. Peter Obi is a strong figure in Nigerian politics today. Atiku's camp, who see 2027 as their big chance, are said to be reaching out quietly to convince Obi not to run. Why would they do this? It's simple politics. Atiku and Obi are now in the same coalition under the African Democratic Congress, the ADC. In a coalition, too many strong candidates can divide the votes. Atiku's allies believe that if Obi steps aside, Atiku stands a better chance to finally fulfill his lifelong ambition of becoming president. Now, to understand the weight of this move, you have to look at who Atiku is and what he represents. Atiku Abubakar has been in politics for decades. He was Vice President of Nigeria between 1999 and 2007. Since then, he has contested for president in different parties and different elections, but he has never won. Despite all these losses, he has never stopped trying. For Atiku, 2027 may be the last window for him to achieve his dream. This is why his supporters are doing everything possible to clear the path for him, including asking Peter Obi not to contest. For Peter Obi, the story is different. He may not have been in politics as long as Atiku, but in 2023, he shocked everyone. He moved from being a candidate of a smaller party, the Labour Party, to becoming a national phenomenon. He won millions of votes, cut across religious and regional lines, and gave Nigerians the feeling that a fresh option was possible. That performance made him the face of a new political movement, and it made many young people believe that change could finally happen. Now picture this: you have Atiku, the seasoned politician with resources, structure, and experience. Then you have Obi, the fresh candidate with passionate supporters and a growing reputation for integrity. If they both enter the same race under the same coalition, there is a high chance they will split the votes. This is the danger Atiku's camp is trying to avoid. So, what exactly are Atiku's allies doing? Reports suggest that there have been backdoor conversations, private meetings, and subtle pressures aimed at convincing Obi to step down early. They want him to accept a role that still keeps him relevant, but not as the presidential candidate. Some say they want him to wait his turn, maybe in 2031 or beyond. Others suggest he could be offered an important role in the coalition, but not the top ticket. This is where the real test comes in. For Obi, stepping aside might look like a smart political compromise, but it could also look like betrayal to his supporters. These are people who stood by him in 2023, people who marched on the streets, people who donated their little resources, and people who believed he was the first true alternative to the old order. If Obi decides not to contest in 2027, many of those supporters might feel abandoned, and that could weaken the very movement that brought him this far. At the same time, Obi knows politics is about strategy. If he goes against Atiku in the same coalition, the ruling party could benefit from the division. Nigeria's ruling party has always counted on opposition disunity to win. So, Obi faces a difficult choice: stay in the race and risk splitting the coalition, or step aside and risk losing the trust of his people. Atiku's allies are pushing this hard because they understand time is running out. They know Atiku does not have another decade to keep contesting. For him, 2027 is not just another election, it could be the final attempt to cap a long political career. This is why their lobbying is not soft talk, it is a serious effort to tilt the scales in his favor long before the real campaigns begin. This lobbying also reveals something bigger about Nigerian politics. It shows that behind the scenes, the biggest battles are not always between government and opposition. Sometimes, the hardest struggles happen inside the opposition itself, where ambitions collide and personal interests clash. The fight between Atiku's camp and Obi's camp is a clear example of this. Will Obi accept these pressures? Nobody knows yet. He has not come out to say he will step down, and knowing his character, he may not be quick to make such a decision. He has always branded himself as different from the typical politician, and stepping aside for Atiku might send the wrong message. But at the same time, Obi also wants power, and to get there, he may have to play the long game. One thing is clear, the lobbying will continue. Atiku's allies will not stop. They will push harder, they will use every argument possible, and they will try to convince Obi that stepping down is the only way to keep the coalition united. Whether Obi agrees or resists, the decision he makes will shape the story of 2027. Let's face it. Atiku Abubakar is not new to power. He was Nigeria's vice president for 8 years under President Olusegun Obasanjo, from 1999 to 2007. During that time, he was deeply involved in government affairs, from economic reforms to national policies. He knows how the system works. He has networks across the country, relationships built over decades, and access to resources that very few politicians can match. Many of his supporters argue that this wealth of experience makes him more competent than Peter Obi when it comes to handling the Nigerian presidency. Atiku's record shows that he is no stranger to political negotiations and coalition building. In fact, he has moved across different parties several times in search of the platform that can help him achieve his presidential ambition. Some see this as a weakness, but others see it as proof of his political skill. He knows how to adapt, how to strike deals, and how to survive in Nigeria's rough political climate. If competence means knowing the inner workings of government and politics, then Atiku has it. But competence is not only about experience. Competence is also about results. And this is where critics raise questions. Despite all his years in politics, Atiku has not held the presidency. As vice president, he was influential but never the final decision-maker. His critics say that while he talks about reforms and has big ideas, he has never been fully tested as the #1 leader of the country. So, his long CV does not automatically guarantee performance. On the other hand, Peter Obi has a shorter CV, but his record as governor of Anambra State speaks loudly. He was known for managing resources prudently, cutting waste, and saving money for the state. He often points out that when he left office, Anambra had no debts but had money in savings. This message of financial discipline and accountability is what gave him credibility in the 2023 elections. For many Nigerians who are tired of corruption and reckless spending, Obi represents a breath of fresh air. Now, here is the real difference between Atiku and Obi. Atiku is the man of experience and structure, while Obi is the man of momentum and popularity. Atiku has spent decades building relationships with politicians, business leaders, and power brokers. He knows how to mobilize party machinery and how to campaign across Nigeria's complex regions. Obi, however, connects directly with the people, especially the youth and middle class, who are frustrated with the status quo. His popularity is not because of old networks but because of the new hope he represents. This contrast creates a very interesting question, which matters more in 2027, political competence in the traditional sense, or mass popularity with a new generation of voters. Nigeria is at a crossroads. On one hand, the country is in need of strong leadership with deep knowledge of governance, and that favors Atiku. On the other hand, Nigerians are desperate for change, honesty, and transparency, and that favors Obi. Let's also consider electability. Atiku has contested for president multiple times. In 2019 and 2023, he was the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, but he lost both times. Some Nigerians now believe that his time has passed, that he is no longer the fresh alternative people are looking for. His repeated losses could make him less attractive to the electorate in 2027, no matter how competent he may appear on paper. Obi, however, is seen as the rising star. Even though he lost in 2023, he gained momentum. His support base is young and growing, and young people do not easily give up. But there is also a weakness for Obi. While his popularity is high, his political structure is still weak compared to Atiku's. Elections in Nigeria are not only about social media support or mass movements. They also require ground operations, polling agents, logistics, and deep funding. Atiku has all these in abundance. Obi's challenge will be to build the same strong structure in time for 2027, and that is no small task. So, when Atiku supporters say he is more competent, they mean he has the structure, the networks, the knowledge, and the readiness to govern. When Obi supporters say he is the better option, they mean he has the vision, the character, and the people's trust. Both sides have valid points, and this is what makes the coming clash inside the coalition so delicate. Another important angle is trust. Nigerians have often seen Atiku as a politician who plays the game too much. His wealth and his constant movement across parties raise questions about whether he is driven by service or ambition. Obi, in contrast, is seen as frugal, transparent, and less desperate for power. This is why many ordinary Nigerians are more willing to believe Obi, even if Atiku may have more technical experience. The real battle between competence and popularity is therefore also a battle between old politics and new politics. Atiku symbolizes the experienced political class that has been around for decades. Obi symbolizes the new wave of leaders that Nigerians are calling for. Which one will win in 2027 depends not only on the candidates themselves but also on the mood of the country. If Nigerians are still desperate for a total break from the past, Obi's popularity could overwhelm Atiku's competence. But if Nigerians decide that experience and political skill are more important, Atiku could finally get his chance. What cannot be denied is that both men bring different strengths to the table, and that is why Atiku's camp sees Obi as a serious threat. This is exactly why the lobbying is happening. If Atiku is to stand as the coalition's candidate without fear, Obi must be removed from the way. But convincing Obi to step down will not be easy, because Obi knows his own strength, and he knows the people behind him. As we move closer to 2027, this struggle inside the ADC coalition may shape the entire political season. The decision Peter Obi makes in the next 2 years will not only affect his personal career but could also determine whether the coalition succeeds or fails. This is why many political watchers are paying close attention to how things unfold. If Obi refuses to step down, the coalition risks going into the election divided. Imagine Atiku on one side and Obi on the other, both drawing strong support but from similar groups of voters. The danger here is simple: a divided opposition makes it easier for the ruling party to win again. Nigeria's political history shows that the ruling party often thrives when the opposition cannot unite. This happened in the past, and it could easily happen again if the coalition does not speak with one voice. But what if Obi does agree to step aside? That scenario comes with its own complications. If Atiku becomes the sole flag-bearer of the coalition, it might look good on paper, but it could also backfire. Obi supporters, especially young Nigerians, are very passionate. They do not just see him as another politician. They see him as a movement, as a symbol of change. If he suddenly steps aside for Atiku, many of them could feel betrayed. They may see it as Obi joining the same old system they are fighting against. That feeling of disappointment could weaken the coalition, because those supporters might lose motivation or refuse to vote at all. This is why Obi's decision is not a simple yes or no. If he stays in the race, the coalition could split. If he steps aside, he risks losing the loyalty of his base. Either way, there is a risk. Now let's look at Atiku himself. For Atiku, 2027 is more than just another election. It is most likely his last real chance to become president. He has contested several times, lost each time, but still remains determined. His allies believe that with the coalition behind him, 2027 could finally be his breakthrough. But the problem is that Atiku's repeated failures may make voters see him as unelectable. Nigerians may ask, if he could not win in 2019 or 2023, why should 2027 be different? On the other side, Obi has momentum but not structure. In 2023, he ran under the Labour Party and surprised everyone with his performance, but he did not have enough polling agents, enough grassroots coordinators, or enough funds to protect his votes everywhere. These are weaknesses Atiku does not have. If Obi chooses to contest in 2027, he must fix these weaknesses. He must build a stronger network, expand beyond urban youth supporters, and penetrate rural areas where most Nigerians still vote. Without that, even his popularity may not be enough. The coalition itself also faces a test of credibility. Nigerians are watching closely to see whether ADC will truly be different from the old parties or whether it will simply become another platform for recycled ambitions. If the coalition cannot manage the rivalry between Atiku and Obi, then it will prove that nothing has really changed. But if they somehow find a way to unite without breaking their base, then ADC could become the strongest opposition force Nigeria has ever seen. The bigger picture is that Nigeria is in desperate need of leadership. The economy is struggling, insecurity remains a challenge, and trust in government is very low. By 2027, people will be even more frustrated and eager for solutions. The question will be, who can convince Nigerians that they are ready to deliver? Atiku will say he has the experience and the competence. Obi will say he has the vision and the honesty. The people will have to decide which one they believe more. Another possible scenario is negotiation. Obi may not step aside completely but could agree to a power-sharing arrangement. For example, he could accept to be Atiku's running mate or take another important role in the coalition. That way, he stays relevant while giving Atiku a clearer path. But even that is risky. Obi supporters may not accept him playing second fiddle to Atiku because they believe he deserves to be at the front. There is also the possibility that Obi simply ignores the lobbying, stays in the race, and trusts Nigerians to decide. If he takes this route, it could lead to one of two outcomes. He could either prove that his movement is strong enough to defeat both the ruling party and Atiku at the same time, or he could weaken the coalition so much that the ruling party wins easily. At the end of the day, what happens in 2027 will depend on choices made now. The lobbying will continue, the private meetings will continue, and the pressure on Obi will keep increasing. But Obi has to ask himself one key question: does stepping aside serve the people who believe in him, or does it only serve the ambition of one man, Atiku Abubakar? For Atiku, the path is clearer. He knows what he wants, and he is ready to do whatever it takes to get it. For Obi, the path is more complicated. He has to balance his personal ambition, the expectations of his supporters, and the unity of the coalition. One thing is certain: the decision Obi makes will be one of the biggest turning points in Nigerian politics before 2027. It could either make him a kingmaker who sacrifices for the coalition, or it could keep him in the fight as the main challenger to both Atiku and the ruling party. Nigerians will be watching closely, and whatever choice he makes, it will shape the story of the next election. So the big question remains: should Peter Obi step aside for Atiku, or should he stay in the race no matter the pressure?